Welcome to the show. I'm super stoked about our guest today. I'm really excited, and we're blessed, and I'm honored to have him on the show. I think this is going to be one of the best ones we've had in a while. Trevor McGregor, Coach Trevor McGregor, actually, is on today, and he's going to share some really, really cool things with you. We were talking earlier, and I've been looking at his bio here before the call. A wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and has really coached, you said earlier, 25,000 people in your day. So I think there's going to be a lot of really good shares, a lot of good feedback, a lot of good Q&A on the call today. So I'm just excited to have you on the call today, Trevor. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Joe. Great to be on the show. Love your show, and I love just how much practical advice you give the listener. And ready to dive in.
Yeah. Let's just get into it. Tell the audience, those that don't have experience, with you and so far. Give us just a quick background about, what brought you to the show today, and in life, a little bit of your bio.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I don't know if it's the short version or the long version, but as the version goes, I'm a high performance master platinum coach. I am also a professional keynote speaker. I'm a real estate investor. I'm an impact investor. I live up in British Columbia, Canada. So for those of you that may not know where that is on a map, I'm 2 hours north of Seattle. Absolutely love this part of Canada. It's absolutely beautiful. And really, Joe, growing up, all I ever wanted to do was play hockey. If you know Canadian kids, all they want to do is get to the NHL. And I did play hockey at a high level, but I just didn't have the speed or the size. And so later in my teens, I traded in my skates and went off and studied college and studied business and went to work like most of us in the corporate arena. Went to work for a phenomenal hospitality group. And I, literally went up through the ranks there and became the director of operations, doing things like, procurement, HR, finance, marketing, wore many different hats there. And then when I was just short of 30 years of age, the owners of that company said, Trevor, we really like what you've been doing. We want to cut you into the company. We've got this big expansion plan going to happen in year 2000. Would you consider putting in a pretty sizable chunk of money and coming in with us? And I thought, Joe, wow, this is my chance to get rich. 29 years old, married, 2 kids. I thought this was going to be the opportunity of a lifetime. And so I literally got to a place where I borrowed all the money out of my 401k. I cashed in all of those. I cashed in all of my savings. I even convinced my own parents to take out a second mortgage on the family home, a 6-figure second mortgage, because they trusted me. And I shoved all this money into this expansion plan. And I thought, here we go. And for the first year and a half, it went really, really well. We were expanding in 5 major cities across Canada. And then in about 2001, right around September, when those planes hit the towers, you'll remember the whole economy stopped. People didn't know what was going on, if we're going to go to war or what. And we were expanding so fast and so rapid that we couldn't hang on. And to make a long story short, I lost all of that money I put into that expansion, all of it, gone, right? So there I was, about 31 years old. It literally took a toll on my mind. It took a toll on my body. It took a toll on my marriage. And what does anyone do when they're down and out? Well, you hire a coach. And thank God that's what I did, because my coach said this to me. He said, what happened to you is really unfortunate, but you're still a young man. You got to get up, dust yourself off, and keep on going like any good entrepreneur. And I said, yeah, but I don't know how. And he said, one thing that changed my life forever. And he said, have you ever thought of investing in real estate? And I said, real estate? I don't know anything about real estate. And he said, well, you can use other people's money, buy a property, fix it up, either refi it or sell it, and keep rinsing and repeating. And, Joe, my back was up against the wall, and it was literally all I could do to scrape other money from family and friends, buy one little property, fix it up. I refied it, bought another one, fixed it up, refied it. And then I bought my 3rd property. And I don't know if you've ever discovered what cash flow is, but that's what a duplex really taught me. And so I went on to buy more duplexes and then 4plexes, single family homes. And in just around 2.5 years, not only did I make enough money to pay back all my failed loans, but I had a sizable cash flowing real estate portfolio on the top of it. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because people started asking me, how did you do it? How are you doing it? It was my son's baseball coach, my other son's soccer coach, and they said, will you show us what you're doing? And so I said, well, buy me a beer and I'll show you anything. And so I sat down with him and his wife, and literally within 2 months, they had bought their first rental property. Within 4 months, their second. And by the end of the year, they bought 3 properties. And then other people would come to me. And I think that that's when the real coaching bug bit. And as I was working with my own Tony Robbins coach at the time, you know, he noticed my passion for people, business, real estate, everything. And he said, Trevor, Tony Robbins is hiring business coaches because he wants to go beyond being a life coach and really, you know, grow his business division. And I said, well, I don't know anything about how to be a coach. And he said, well, here, go start taking courses and put your resume in. And so I listened to what he said and literally went and got my coaching certification in Orlando, Florida. Then I applied to Tony Robbins, and I had to start going to all the events, reading all the books, listening to all the audios. I mean, it was a real library. And believe it or not, I was offered a position with Tony Robbins. I literally dropped everything to go work for the man, the myth, the legend, spent half a decade as one of Tony's top master platinum coaches, and left Tony in about 2017 to start Trevor McGregor International. And here we are today, and I predominantly support business owners, Fortune 500 executives, a lot of real estate investors, doctors, lawyers, just absolutely amazing Olympic athletes, professional, you know, sports heroes. And literally this is the arena and the sandbox that I get to play in every day now. But that's kind of the long version to where I started, where I wobbled, and where I am today. That's it.
Man, dude, there's so many things to unpack there. And I just want to touch on a few things for our audience, because we talk about a lot of things. We talk about our favorite failures, right? And I usually get deeper into this, like deeper into the episode once we get a little bit to know you. I love that you jumped right into the failure piece, right? Because a lot of people are they're just uncomfortable talking about, you know, the downside and what happens to people sometimes when we hit a wall, or, you know, we hit a big speed bump and it shakes us, you know, and today, especially today, right? And I think it's happening to a lot of people, and they're not discussing it. They're not talking about it. You know, we're hiding behind it, or, you know, we're wearing a mask, right? In
Yep.
2020, especially, but let's stick to the point for a second. You had a big failure and you said the words, my back was against the wall. Right? My back was against the wall and I had no other choice. I had to figure out a different angle. I think sometimes it's so important that we have these failures, because they force us to make a change. They force us to own up to what needs to happen. They force us to become almost a different person, or to make different choices, to make us better people, or become the people we are today. And those failures that you experience, just like a lot of other folks, that you would have never been here doing what you're doing now in this world that you're experiencing if you didn't have those failures, right?
No, you're spot on, my man. And it's absolutely true. And, you know, it brings up a lot of great quotes that you learn along the way. You know, like, you know, Napoleon Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, there is no failure. There's only feedback, you know, and we always get a lot of feedback in life, in our career, you know, in our finances, in our relationships, in our health, in our fulfillment, all those things. But it's really true that it doesn't define you, because nothing has a meaning until you gave it a meaning. If I would have given that a full meaning of failure, you're right, I would not be sitting here having this conversation with you today. But when my coach said, you know what, you're still a young man, you got a wife and 2 kids, get up, dust yourself off and keep going. And you look back at the Richard Bransons, you look at the Elon Musks, you look at the Oprah Winfreys, you know, this is the entrepreneur's journey, right? Nobody gets to go in a straight line to success, but, you know, thank God I had that coach, because again, at the you know, looking back now, I don't know what I would have done if he didn't really, you know, be that guy that believed in me so much to lift me up and help me grow. Does that make sense?
Oh, not only does it make so much sense, I want people listening, especially in today's age and time, and again, tumultuous, you know, so much just angst going on in the world. There are people out there, and if you're listening to this, there is someone that believes in you. There's someone that's there to help dust you off. There's someone there that wants to give you a shot. There's people out there looking out for you. So understand that if you're going through these things, reach out, find that person. There's someone that's going to help you through that. Switching back one more second, because there's another takeaway here that I think is so huge and so important. And I wrote down this as you were talking, but people will second guess all your moves until you're successful, right? They're going to second guess, man, you sure you should do this? Do you know what you're doing? Is that the right move? And then you're successful. And all of a sudden they start asking you for advice, right, Trevor? Right?
Yeah.
They're like, man, are you a real estate investor? Do you want to do that? And then all of a sudden they're like, man, you're making money at this. Can you teach me how to do that? You notice that, huh?
It's so funny you bring that up, because I have that conversation with people all the time, because I'll coach, a newbie investor, an intermediate, or, some of the experts out there. But at the end of the day, you're right. People hear the word, you're going to invest in real estate. Your tenants are going to call you at 2 a.m. because their toilet's plugged, right? They're going to, throw a hammer through the sheetrock, right? And you're setting yourself up for failure. But I'm telling you, I think that is possible in real estate, but it's also possible that you do a really good job finding the right tenants, buying in the right areas, doing the financing right, to where, you can create a phenomenal level of success. Does it mean there won't be a few speed bumps or hiccups? No. But again, I always ask this question, and even when I look back at my wobble around 2001, you literally get this from Tony Robbins, who's been my coach and my mentor for so long. He says, is life happening to you, or is life happening for you? And at the time, Joe, I thought life was happening to me, but now, hindsight being what it is, and like you said, this is a tumultuous time for a lot of people going through the pandemic and what's going on. You really got to ask yourself, who do you need to be? Not how do you need to go through the pandemic, but who do you need to be to stomach the down times? Because it's just like a roller coaster. At the bottom of the roller coaster, we know that, once we hit the bottom, that the next step is to go back up. And whether it's my journey, your journey, the listener's journey, we all have a unique opportunity to ask a better question. And that one for the listener is this happening to them, or is this happening for them? Because I believe we're all building immense muscle trying to figure out what this year is about. How would you speak to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what if your belief in yourself was powerful enough to actually accomplish what it is that you wanted to accomplish, right? What if you actually had that vision and just went after it, right? Instead of just staying where you're at and being paralyzed in fear, right? You only have those two options. So why not? Why not chase it?
Well, it reminds me of a great quote, and I don't know who said it, but it's really that great ships weren't built to stay safe in the harbor, right? Great ships were built to go out there and sail the 7 seas. And sometimes it's going to be a peaceful, serene, calm water. And next thing you know, you're going to face some big time waves, and then the wind is going to blow in your face. And again, there's a great quote by Jim Rohn that says, it's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you'll end up. It's the set of the sail. And I'll say that again, but it's not the winds of change that blow on you that will determine where you end up, like the pandemic wind or the presidential election wind or the global warming wind. It's not those winds that will determine where you end up. It's the set of your sail. And who's responsible for setting their sail? Well, you are. I am. The listener is. And so you may not like where you're at in life right now, but I'm telling you, tough times don't last. Tough people do.
Yeah, and it's important too, because I think we're all subject to getting sucked into those winds, right? We all, we get sucked into the social media, we get sucked into the noise, we get sucked into the conversations, the negativity, and it's easy sometimes, especially when you let your guard down, to realize that, like, hey, I want to be here. Everyone else is talking at this level. And maybe I'll just let my guard down and just talk at that level for a little bit. But reality is, if I want to be at this level, I need to hold myself at a different standard. And they need to not let those winds suck me into that direction, right? I need to continue my trajectory and stay in that direction, right? And I think that's a great quote to make sense of all that.
Yeah, and you bring up the word standards, and that's really one of Tony's favorite words. He says he can tell a quality of somebody's result and how they're going to end up by the standard that they hold for themselves. And the standard is where we really ask, have we drawn a line in the sand? Have we declared what we want to tolerate and what we're no longer willing to tolerate? That is, if you're watching too much news, maybe now is the time to turn that off, right? Yeah. If you're gossiping too much about, what's going on behind the scenes, is that helping you or hindering you? Because I'm telling you, we can all raise our standard. And again, I go back to doing it in our career, in our finances, in our health, in our relationships, in the people we even surround ourselves with, because as you become who you hang around with. So again, checking in with your standards is a really fun thing to do as a coach with a client, because we can tell where you're playing what I call below the line and where you're playing what I call above the line. Does that make sense?
100%. And how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So,
Yeah.
keeping yourself at that standard around the clock. So I want to spend some time on this because I want to be respectful of your time. But when we hopped on the call at the beginning, before we hit the record button, you talked about your 5 failures to scale, or 5 ways that you determine fail to scale. I want to get deep on that because I think that's going to be super helpful for our listeners. And this is where, guys, if you're listening to this and you have a chance, pull over or grab a pen and a notepad, because this is where Trevor is going to give you some really actionable advice that's going to help you in your ability to scale. And I think this is going to be some super actionable stuff. So Trevor, can you dive into that a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, more than happy to do that. And I guess what I'd speak to before I dive into those 5 things, Joe, is this is universal, right? This is universal. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I don't care if you're in the US or Australia. It doesn't matter about your ethnicity or your sexual preferences or anything. I find that anybody that wants to do anything in business, in life, or even in real estate, because I know that we've got a lot of people, that play in that arena. These are what I call the 5 reasons that people fail to scale. And I'll go through each one individually, and then I'll stop and get you to reflect. But by the time I'm done delivering this, I want the listener to really take a look at each one of those individually and say, okay, well, where am I showing up in each one of these 5 areas? Because collectively, it's like doing an audit or doing a review on what might be preventing you from scaling. Does that make sense?
Totally.
You bet. So we'll kick it off with the biggest one, the number one thing. I know you talk about this on your show a lot, and that is what I call limiting beliefs. So number one is limiting beliefs, because again, most people think that it's too hard. Most people think that they're too old. Most people think they're not educated enough. Most people think that, oh, I should be happy with what I've got, right? And so we start to tell ourselves stories. We start to rationalize. And if we break that word into 2, we tell ourselves rational lies, right? We rationalize, which just isn't necessarily true when you think about what is possible. Because again, it's like that old Henry Ford quote, what the mind can conceive and believe, it will achieve. So what I do with clients is I get a look at, into their mind, into their psychology, into their beliefs, their values, their rules, what they think is possible. And then we unpack all of that to create a new way of thinking that is going to happen before they start doing what's involved in step 2. But limiting beliefs are the big one. Does that resonate?
Totally. And we talk about this so much, right? What you tell yourself, what you believe, what your story is, and all these things. And they keep people from doing things what they would consider to be uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable is just a step that you haven't taken yet, right? And once you take it, it's no longer uncomfortable. So yes, absolutely.
And you're right about their identity. I mean, identity is a big piece, right? It's really a great quote. It's probably Tony's longest quote ever, but he says that the strongest force in the human personality is the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. Now that's a mouthful. I'll say it again. The strongest force in the human personality, that means inside of us, is the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. If we define ourselves as a victim, we're going to remain a victim. If we define ourselves as a victor, we can move to victory. So I love that you threw that piece in, because, we often talk about, the standards. We talk about your story. We talk about your state, which is really your focus. And you're either focused on the problem or you're focused on the solution to the problem, but you have to choose. So that whole number one limiting belief thing is really, it encompasses and surrounds all of that. Does that resonate?
100%. 100%. Yep.
And Joe, that takes us to number 2. And number 2 is phenomenal, because number 2 is what I call a lack of a strategic plan. A lack of a strategic plan. More people spend time planning their vacation to Mexico, for a week than they do planning out their life, right? And it's just mind-boggling, because if you don't know where you are and where you want to go, that would be like going to an airport and just saying, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to go where I want to go. That's not going to happen. So what we do is get crystal clear on where you're at today, where you want to go, and we check that gap in between. But what we really check on is what's preventing you from making those first initial steps, right? What is it that's blocking you? What's the obstacle? What's the roadblock? What's the limiting factor? Because oftentimes people feel that there's a bigger boulder than there really is. And once we get you taking what I call intelligent and inspired action towards your outcome, it'd be like going up a flight of stairs. You take the first 2 steps, and then you reveal steps 3 and 4, and then you scramble up steps 3, 4, up to 5 and 6, and then 6, 7, 8, and you just keep going. Because at the end of the day, I really want people to realize that they're probably being task focused when they need to adopt what I call an outcome focused. An outcome focused is where you know your destination. You know what you want, why you want it, and what needs to happen to get you there. So once we get rid of limiting beliefs as step 1, then we create the roadmap, the recipe, or the blueprint in step 2 to create the plan of action. Does that make sense?
So good. So good, man. And so I was just doing a call about this, and I'm sure this ties into it. I think one of the most important things is people don't write anything down, right? We have no plan. Forget a business plan. We don't have a life plan. We don't write down our goals. And I love that you tied in an analogy of, and I'll use my wife as an example. I'm not throwing her under the bus, but like when we go on a vacation, she has anxiety. So she wants to plan everything. We have to know where we're going to eat, where we're going to land, where we're going to stay, what kind of hotel, what does the room have an ocean view or a court view? And that's all well and good, right? But when we start to think about, what our life plan is, it's like, what do we want in life? How much money do we want to make? What are we going to do with it? What's our legacy look like? What's our estate planning look like? And that's where I want to get more granular. Right. Yep. And it's funny because we will spend minute detail on a vacation plan. Right.
Yep.
But most people won't think about their business that way. They won't think about what their goals are each year that way, let alone write it down. And I think that's very, very important. The way you just laid that out is having a strategic plan of what are we trying to do, because you can't weigh it against how far you've come if you haven't laid out the plan that you're trying to map out. You don't know where you've been if you don't know where you're trying to go.
Well, I love that you shared that, and you're spot on, because I think most people, think they've got a plan, but they keep it up here in this 3-pound mass called your brain. Well, your brain's real dominant, feature is to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, to keep you alive. And I'm telling you, writing things down absolutely enhances anybody's ability, and Tony says, get it out of your head and get it on paper because it becomes real. That's absolutely true. But we go even further. I mean, we don't just talk about business and finances. We take a look at your health. How are you showing up in your physical and mental health? How are you showing up with your spouse? If you were to rate yourself as a parent, where are you winning and where are you not, right? How are you showing up, in tithing or giving money to charity? So there's multiple categories of improvement. We shorten that to COIs, categories of improvement that we work on so that we create a very well-rounded person, not just somebody who is just business or financially, driven. We really want you to live a purpose-driven life. And that's why when we say, what do you want, and most people will say, and how do I get it? We've got to insert that middle piece of why do you really, really, really want it? Because when the why is big enough, and you've heard this lots of times, the how tends to show up. The how tends to come to you when you need to figure out how to do something. So what do I want? Why do I want it? And then ultimately we can start moving towards it.
So good. So good.
Now, that's exciting because it takes us to step 3. And step 3 is really what I call a lack of systems for support. A lack of systems for support. Because here's the truth. We can get rid of your limiting beliefs and we can create an action plan. But do you have sustainable practices, daily habits, routines, and rituals that allow you to, create systems to support your outcome, right? It could be a roadmap, a recipe, a blueprint. It could be a business partner. It could be technology. I mean, what could you be using right now as a system to support you in getting to your outcome, right? And I know that you're part of phenomenal mastermind groups. I'm part of phenomenal mastermind groups. So it could be something that maybe you're not really, latching onto that's right in front of you that literally gives you the ability to speed up your path to success. And so really step 3 is I find that most people that create systems, they don't sustain them, or other people that create systems, they quit using them after week 2. It's kind of like a New Year's resolution. So between the limiting beliefs, the lack of a strategic plan, and the lack of systems, again, those are the first three things that I see over and over and over that cause people to fail.
I love that. And just to tag on to the systems piece, I think it's one of the most overused words as far as, like clickbait or, terminologies, but it's one of the most important structures. And I see people all the time with shiny object syndrome because they have a great system in front of them, but they're always looking for that next push button overnight success system where they can plug in and make millions of dollars by pressing a button when they have great systems in front of them. I mean, look, a yellow notepad can be a great system if used properly, but you have to be consistent with it and you have to use a system, right? So I think that it's a great piece that a lot of people tend to overlook because they don't get comfortable in one system and just use an environment that they're good at, right? So I think it's a great component.
You bet. Yellow notepads are phenomenal. Excel spreadsheets are phenomenal, right? Time stamping things are phenomenal. I mean, there's just no shortage of people can always better the system. So that takes us to number 4. This is probably the one I'm the most passionate about taking clients through, and it's what I call poor time management. We've all got, Joe, something called the rule of 168. And if you're not familiar with that, we all have 168 hours a week to literally live our life. Now, we sleep for a bunch of those hours, we eat, we pay the bills, we play with the kids, but what are you doing with the rest of your time, right? And are you doing the high impact, high income activities? Are you taking care of your family? Are you taking care of your body? Are you reading? Are you listening to great podcasts like Joe's? I mean, you really have to check in and do what I call a time management audit to really figure out, where you're playing below the line and what you need to do to change to start playing above the line. Because, Joe, there are things that our listeners will find helpful here as we go through the 4 Ds of time management, where yes, there are things that you should do. There are things that you should delay doing. There are things that you should delegate. And believe it or not, folks, there are things that you should probably dump altogether. So we're either going to do, delay, delegate, or dump things in our path to really finding out how to optimize and maximize what we're doing with our time. Because as the saying goes, you've got 168 hours just like I do, just like Tony Robbins does, Oprah Winfrey does, Elon Musk has, but it's not the amount of time that we all have, it's what you do with that time. And a lot of people really fall down in that department. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. Again, valuing your time, folks, and understanding what is the value of your role. Or do you want to be a visionary? Do you want to be a team leader? Do you want to, do you want to be an hourly employee? And there's nothing right or wrong about, where you want to be and what it is you want to do. But understanding that if you want to be a multimillionaire, you can't continue to be $10, doing $10 an hour activities. You have to figure out where you want to fit in that big scheme of things, right? And you're right, Trevor. People find themselves doing those activities time and time again, and then they say, "Oh, I'm working 100 hours a week." Well, if you're working 100 hours a week, there's a reason for that, right?
Well, that's so good. That's so good. It reminds me that there's an actual statistic that the average American, not necessarily you, but the average American watches 36 hours of television a week, right? That's insane,
Yeah.
And that's why Tony Robbins calls the TV the electronic income reducer, right? It doesn't make you money. It puts you in a comatose state. And then you go buy all the, the commercial, goods that people program you with. So the other thing I want to, give you an acknowledgement for is you talk about roles and responsibilities, right? That is, do you know exactly what you should be doing to work in your zone of genius with the time you have and what you probably really don't like to do? I'll give you an example in real estate. For me, I have real estate all over, the US, all over Canada, Costa Rica, we're partners. We've got some stuff going on in Australia. And for me, I love going out there and finding deals. I like raising capital for deals. But if you ask me to underwrite a building, that is just not my jam. That is for other people to figure out. I can do it, but it's not my zone of genius. So as you guys do your time management audit, take a look at things where you are absolutely passionate about doing it, right? Take a look at other things that you really don't mind doing or not doing. And then I guarantee there's some things that are lower level activities or higher level activities that you'd be well served to farm out to someone else.
100%. I just had this conversation yesterday, Trevor. Like, what is your unique ability? And we're taking on self-storage developments. And I said to somebody yesterday, I said, my unique ability is putting together really, really great teams. I will find the best subcontractors. I'll find the best architects, the best engineers. I have a history and background in construction. That doesn't mean I'm the best construction manager out there. I'll find the best construction manager I can find, and we'll create the best team for developing these sites. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm not the guy to build every single one of them. I will put the best team together. And the guy I was on the phone with, who happened to be a lender, he was like, wow, I don't hear too many people admit that they're not the best one out there to develop these sites. I'm like, well, the reality of it is I know my unique ability. I know what I'm great at. I'm great at finding great people and then allowing them to be responsible to do what we hired them to do. And, I think it's super important that we understand what we're really great at and what our weaknesses are. And being able to admit that is super important. And I'm not saying that from a cocky perspective. I'm saying that I think more people need to be able to be able to admit that kind of thing, and they'll be better off that way, right?
Absolutely. You can go way further faster remembering life is a team sport. I mean, if you were one person trying to wear 17 different hats and do everything on your own, that's okay. But you really got to ask, is that the best way to optimize and maximize what the outcome is that I'm moving towards? It'd be like, if you went to the airport and you and your wife were taking that beautiful trip that you take, are you going to tell the pilot, hey, go sit in the back, I'm going to fly the plane? Like, that wouldn't happen. You'd let him fly the plane. You go in the back and have a cocktail and enjoy your time to your sunny destination. So again, zone of genius, roles and responsibilities. What are you passionate about? What are you not passionate about? And then again, think about that $10 or $20 an hour time frame, because if you're not working on things that, I always ask people, what's an hour of your time worth? If people believe me here, most people answer that number lower than they really should, because your knowledge, your wisdom, your education, your background, your skill set, your life set, your heart set, they're all contributing factors. So whatever number that you might answer that with, I want you to double it. I want you to triple it. I want you to really lean into the fact that, we're all here with our own zone of genius, but I really come back to, are you doing the things that are allow you to going to make impact and make income? Because money is a byproduct of the impact that we all make. So if you, with your construction background, you going off and looking at self-storage stuff, and I own self-storage stuff in Key West, Florida, love that stuff. But if you really, really optimize and maximize that stuff, you will get to your outcome, which will allow you to then go out and rinse it and repeat it and rinse and repeat it. And, I'm a big believer in making money, not just to make money, but it's what you can do with that money to help more people so that they too can, live a better life. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
So my man, that takes us to number 5, the final thing, and the 5 reasons why people fail to scale. And I think you'll find number 5 pretty familiar. And it's really a trifecta of 3 things. Number 1, lack of execution, lack of course correction, and believe it or not, lack of accountability. Yes, accountability, I said it. So lack of execution, lack of course correction. That is, maybe if you're not on point, do you just cry in your soup, or do you find a way to resurrect and regroup? And then number 3, I find that if you don't have some sort of accountability system, whether that's a business partner, a spouse, a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a mastermind group partner, you're really fooling yourself, because we know the human, condition and the path of least resistance will take over, and you'll find yourself sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Well, that's not going to make impact or income. So I really want the listener to really think about, how are they executing, right? How are they measuring or having benchmarks to check in to see if they're on track or not? And then ask themselves, what have they set for an accountability role, right? Either for themselves or their company or their partners or whatever, because I want to really emphasize again that this is universal, whether it is the limiting beliefs, the lack of a strategic plan, the lack of systems for support, the poor time management, or that trifecta of execution, course correction, and accountability. There's really not a lot more that we need to, study when it comes to doing that self-audit. So Joe, what's your reflection on all 5 of those things?
I think it's awesome. You must know me, because I talk about all of these things pretty much all the time in our mastermind groups. That number 5, it hits so many angles at the same time, right? Because I think Trevor, we're all affected by these things at some point in time, right? Like, I think with the execution piece, we all get lazy at some point in time, right? I think if we're lying to ourselves, if we all say that we get up and we execute 100%, 110% every single day, I think there's a lot of memes and social media profiles that pretend to do that, but I'm not sure that actually happens, right? Course correction, we all have to learn how to pivot. And I think if anything was taught to us in 2020, it was, if you don't know how to pivot, you're gonna get swallowed up, and you need to learn how to figure out how to make change on the fly. And the accountability piece, again, I think accountability happens in so many different directions, whether it's hiring a coach to help you stay on track with your healthy eating habits, or working out, or business, or we have accountability groups for multiple different things. So every one of us, no matter what, we need self-discipline in some category. That accountability piece is paramount in some way, shape, or form. Unless you totally love to do something, you're going to need to be accountable to do that thing. So, I love number 5. I think it's spot on. But man, this whole piece, I mean, I think you're right. Every one of these things ties into the scalability of what you're trying to create. And if you're not on par with these things, you're not going to see that scale. So, I think these are great. I think for our listeners, I hope you guys took notes. I hope you wrote these things down. Trevor, where do people find you? Where do they reach out to you? Where do they, find your coaching?
Well, thank you very much. And before I share that, I just want to remind people that, it doesn't have to be, your spouse, because maybe your spouse isn't the right person to keep you accountable. Sometimes they're the wrong person to keep you accountable, to be honest. And that goes men and women. It doesn't have to be your best friend. You can find great people, at mastermind groups, meetups, business luncheons, that sort of thing. But I do recommend that people hire coaches. And here's why. I mean, the world is sped up so fast, and we've got so many things coming at us. Wouldn't it just make sense? I mean, Tony often talks about stepping into what he calls his common sense corner, right? If we step into the common sense corner here, wouldn't it make sense to have somebody that you could literally co-create with, that could be a sounding board, that could hold you accountable? I mean, if you really are a high performer and you know that you want to go from good up to great, but you want to go from great up to excellent, and there's still 2 more levels, excellent up to outstanding, or outstanding to where I love to take people, which is extraordinary or extraordinary, ask, how could a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a trainer help you? And, I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. In fact, I have 2 coaches that kick my ass regularly, plus I have an accountability partner in Seattle, plus I have a mastermind group. So at the end of the day, I really believe there's always another level for any of us that are defiantly committed to moving forward. So in addition to finding a coach, a teacher, a mentor, someone like that, there's 2 other things that I want you to really think about as we get ready to finish this year strong and step into 2021. And that is, how hungry are you? I mean, let's ask that again. How hungry are you? Because I find that a lot of people will eat an appetizer and they're satisfied from it, but I'm telling you, there's a whole buffet out there for people to sink their teeth into. There's never been a better time to seize and grab opportunities that are coming our way, whether that's in business, whether that's in travel once COVID opens up, whether that's in, doing some charity work. But find something you're hungry for more of, and find a way to unleash your passion, because where there's passion, there's possibility. So all of that kind of leads to where people can get a hold of me. There's 2 ways to do it. You can simply go to my website, which is trevormcgregor.com. That's trevormcgregor.com. Or if there are some high performers out there that want to have a one-to-one call with me, you can simply go to coachwithtrevor.com. That's coachwithtrevor.com. Enter your details. We'll set up a 30-minute call and we'll chat about where you're at, where you want to go, and literally check in on those 5 things that we discussed, because I'm here to help more people unleash themselves to live their best life. And ultimately, it's what my passion is. It's what I committed my life to, because I said to my old coach, when he got me up and dusted me off and he helped me get to where I am, I said, man, I'm going to commit my life to doing similar work, because ultimately that's more of what humanity needs.
Dude, that was a great call, man. I think it might be one of our best episodes, honestly. I think you really brought the heat today, and I know that there's going to be some amazing takeaways, and I know that our listeners are going to get a lot out of this. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to everybody today. I appreciate you bringing it, and I know we're gonna spend some more time together talking after the show. So Trevor McGregor, thanks for being on the show today, and thanks for bringing everything you did.
Thank you for having me on again, Joe. Keep up the great work. It's a phenomenal show, and I love supporting the listeners, and we'll catch up again soon. Take care.
All right.